All right, so let's get started. So please go to the course website and head over to the second lab, lab 2. So this lab is about the Singleton design pattern. We're going to look at how to apply this creational design pattern, the Singleton, to solve a commonly occurring problem where we need a single instance of a class. So Singleton is a widely used design pattern. It is used whenever we need only one single instance of a class. We're going to look at the problem of logger and how to log messages using a single class. So we're going to look at a real world scenario, and we will design and implement the Singleton design pattern to solve this problem, and we're going to apply some TDD or test driven developments. So make sure you have Java JDK 8, and all you need is just Java JDK 8 and or above an IntelliJ IDEA to work on this lab. So let's get started. So again, if we are using GitHub Classroom, please be sure to click on the link below. Here under Get Started, you'll find a link to the deliverables and submission, and then click on your section, so that way you will get the assignment submission link. So you click on that link, and then since if you have already accepted one of the assignments in this classroom, you will be directed right away to the submission link. So make sure you accept the assignment, which will create a repository for you. So reload the page to get the link to the repo on GitHub. So this is the repo under my name. Should end with dash your username. And you're good to go. All right. So we need to clone this, download it. So I'm gonna copy the HTTPS URL and clone it into my machine. So open the terminal and run the command git clone. Alright, so we're good. We need to cd to the downloaded repository. So we have it here. Next, we need to import it into our IDE. Alright, so I'm gonna go to IntelliJ IDEA. Let me just copy where it is, the path. I'm gonna copy the name to this repo, so that way I can open it up quickly. So I'm gonna copy the name of the folder that contains the repository and then open it up here. Right, so there it is, and then open. Again, this is a Maven project, so it should download all the dependencies, which we only have for the JUnit library. Alright, so the project is loading right now, and then if we look at the pom.xml file, this is the Maven configuration file. We see that we're using 1.8 JDK, and we have the dependency for the JUnit library. So if you make any changes, make sure you right click and then select Maven and reload the project if you change the JDK version, or change the JUnit version for whatever reason, right? So these are our tests and our main program code. So under main is the code of the program, and the test is the test for this program, right? So let's head over to the course website and check the description for this lab, right? So let's look at the problem. So we're going to look at the problem of logging, keeping logs in events of an application. So we've got a developer working on an order tracking and shipment system, and she needs to create a unique logger object that is used to and shared by all instances in the system to log messages from any application component. So she thought of implementing it as a singleton, and she started with this. So this is the logger class. And then she's using a date time formatter to get the current date. This will be used to name the file, the log file, which is just a text file. And then we're using a print writer. So initialize the file writer and the print writer. And then we have an info and error messages. All right, so these are log messages for informational messages and error messages, right? So this is the class that she wants to use as singleton, and then these are the rest of typical classes for the shipment, where she would instantiate an instance of the logger, and then getting a random number for the order, and then here is the shipment information, right? So this is the constructor. We're gonna sleep to have some simulate a slow initialization, and then we set things and we initialize things here, and then we log a message, informational message. So this is the information, and here is the toString method. All right, so there isn't much in this class. And next is the order class. So the order class, similarly, getting a random number for the order, and then we sleep to simulate in a slow initialization, and then we set things to initialize the order, getting an order number, and then we log messages, right? And then just a typical toString method. And then in our main program, so we so let me see. Yes, this is the log messages where we log things, and this is the toString, right? And here's the use of the logger class right here, right? And then in the main class, we instantiate an order and a shipment, and once you instantiate things, the log messages will be printed. So upon running the program, she discovered that her code generates more than one log file per run, which is not the expected behavior. So running the program results in 2 log files instead of 1. Next is we need to go to the IDE and run the program to see if we get 2 text files as a result of the wrong implementation of the singleton design pattern. All right, so this is the order class. If you have cloned the repo, you do not need to copy and paste the code, as all of it is in the starter code. So this is the shipment, and it looks exactly like what we have got in the lab description, right? So let's take a look at the tests that we have, or the main classes. This is the main class, and it's exactly the same. We create an order and a shipment. So when we run it, we should be able to get the text files. So let's run it, and watch to the left side of the IDE, where you will see the 2 text files generated instead of 1, right? So still running, and there we have it. All right, so we get 2 log files instead of 1 for this run, right? So once we run it, we get 2 instead of 1 for the shipment and 1 for the order. And that's not what we want, right? We want to have 1 shared log file between the 2, right? Between all instances in my class. So let me just delete this so I don't get confused when I fix and rerun things. So select them, and I'm gonna hit the delete key and then delete them. All right, so let's look at the logger, right? So in order for us to implement this logger class as a singleton, the first thing that we see, if you see here in the order and loggers, they all have access to the constructor, so they all can call the new logger, new keyword, and whenever you call the new, you're getting a completely new instance, right? So we need to shut this down. To disable it, we make it private, right? So that way we change the accessibility so external classes cannot see it. So now no one can go and write new. All right. So that's the first thing that we need to do. Make the constructor private. Next, we need a reference to the class, and this reference has to be a private and static. So we do private static logger instance. Let me put the type first. So the type is the class logger, right? And this will hold the singleton instance for me. And then I'm going to write a factory method that will initialize this global instance, right? It's a class variable. So public, static, and then the return type is logger. And then I'm going to give it a name, get logger instance. And it takes no parameters. And then here we want to do the initialization, right? So first we take this global instance and we check if it's null. And if it is null, we need to create an instance, right? So create an instance, and then if it's not null, we will return it. So we're not going to do, so this will access the constructor here inside this method, and we need to return this instance, right? So even if it's not null, we're going to get the one that was already initialized and returned to the caller. All right, so let's save this. And we need, so now the constructor is private. We had a global static static variable, and then we have this factory method that is static, and it will check for that global instance for the global static variable if it does exist or not. All right, so let's change the usage of this class. So we no longer can use the new keyword here. We need to change this to call that factory method. All right. So let me delete this and then use the class name logger and do get logger instance. Remember, get logger instance is a static method, so we have to call it using the class name dot the method name. So let's do the same for the order .java, right? Looks like there is a duplicate code here, so let me just delete it. Duplicate initialization. So this is just used to generate a random order number for our order and then log the messages. So let me go to line 11 and change the logger to logger dot get logger instance using the static method, and then save it, right? So looks like we're good to go. So let's take a look at the main class and let's run it and see if we get a single text file. Right, so watch to the left side of the IDE, still building, and once the build is complete, we will get the text file. Yes, so this is the log file, and now the log file is shared among all instances. Right, so the log file, the logger object is actually shared, not the log file. The logger is shared among all instances, so we get one logger file for all instances. Right, so let me go next and check the test make sure that the test is passing, right? So here you're asked to fix the current implementation of the logger class, and then we want to test also the unit test and make sure that these unit tests are passing. All right, so let's check the logger. The first one, logger test, so should be identicals. We need to use the class method instead of the direct access to the constructor. So let's remove these new loggers, right? So this fixed the logger test class, right? So let's run it. And the test is passing and we're getting green, right? So this is good, right? Next, let's take a look at the lab 2 test. This is the test that will grade your submission. So the first thing similar to should be singleton identicals. The next one we should not have access to the constructor, so it will check that the constructor is private. So this is good. So the constructor is private, and the third one we should have a private and static global variable that holds a reference to the singleton instance, which is right here in line 15, right? So it's a private and it's a static, and it will hold a reference to this. So this will ensure that we have these three, right? So let's run the whole test. So this should run 3 tests, and they're all green and passing, right? Cool. So you run it 3 times, you get 3 log files, because 1 log file per run. So that's fine. Just delete them, so we don't need to commit them and add them to GitHub, right? So now we're good. The tests are passing, and we need to add those and then commit. All right. So I am here in the same directory that my repo in. So I want to push to this remote repository, and then my submission will get auto-graded. So let's do git status, and I have these files, so I can add them all. So I have the logger, the order, the shipment, and the logger test. So git add src. I'm gonna add everything under src. You can add them one by one individually, but use just this command will add them all. So run git status. They have been staged and added. So now we can commit them, right? And committing is just saving a snapshot. I'm going to give it a message, and I'm going to say completed lab 2. So now let's push it. So git push origin main and hit enter. So now it has been uploaded. So if I go to the repo and reload, so this was the last commit from the GitHub Classroom bot. So if I reload, I should be able to see my commit message, and all the files are uploaded here. Right, so that's good. Now the build, so this is the log message, and the build is kicking. All right, it's not green, so it's in progress. So if I go to actions and I go to completed lab 2, you see now it's running. So the test is running, and wait for it to get green if the test is passing. All right, so this will run it in GitHub actions. So it will download all the dependencies, the JDK, and it will start fire up. So green, great. So the test is passing. So if I click on it, I can see the auto grading. click on the auto grading, then click on the third one, auto grading, run education auto grading. It took 18 seconds to finish, so click on it and scroll all the way down on this log message, log messages. Scroll all the way down more until you see the test, all tests passed, right? So great, all tests passed, green, and here's the points that you got, right? So 100 points on this lab, right? So so make sure you check the deliverable and submission. If you're still not sure, there is, and then you can find the instructions along with a video on how to submit this lab, right? So this was the Singleton lab, the second lab. So please make sure you submit your work. Thank you.